Citizens of Puerto Rico took to the streets this Wednesday to protest the lack of medical supplies to face the COVID-19 pandemic. US President Donald Trump's announcement that he was halting funding to the World Health Organization in the midst of the novel coronavirus pandemic has sparked global rejection. China has decided to send medical teams to Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia and Burkina Faso to assist their efforts against the COVID-19 pandemic. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. Citizens of Puerto Rico took to the streets this Wednesday to protest the lack of medical supplies to face the COVID-19 pandemic. Hundreds of protesters demanded that the government of Wanda Vázquez provide social welfare in the midst of the health crisis. They stressed a lack of enough COVID-19 test kits and also highlighted reports of an irregular purchase of medical supplies made by the government from a US company, which was revealed by the Health Committee of the House of Representatives. The coronavirus pandemic is spreading across the Caribbean, with a number of nations reporting a high number of cases and fatalities. Our correspondent in the Dominican Republic, Daisy Toussaint, brings us more details.
Hello, greetings. We offer a review of the situation in the Caribbean region regarding COVID-19 cases. In terms of the Dominican Republic, Public Health Bulletin number 27 was issued today, which shows the increase in confirmed COVID-19 cases, now standing at 3,614, of which 189 patients have died. In Haiti, a country sharing the same island as the Dominican Republic, according to the Public Health Report, there are 41 confirmed cases and 3 deaths. Some 42 inmates not facing serious charges were released from the civil prison of Cape Haitian as part of the process to ease overcrowding in these institutions, established as a measure by the Haitian government, faced with the threat of COVID-19. Meanwhile, in Puerto Rico, the number of positive cases has risen to 974, of which 51 people have died, according to the Ministry of Health. Guyana's health authorities have reported a total of 48 confirmed cases and 6 fatalities. 60% of the cases are men and 40% are women. Jamaica has registered 105 confirmed cases, of which 4 have died and 19 patients have been discharged. In Martinique, with 158 confirmed cases so far, out of which 73 have recovered and 8 have died. On the island of Guadalupe, there are 145 confirmed cases and 8 deaths. There are serious concerns about the economy, and as such the local government announced a support plan for small autonomous companies and liberal professionals. In Trinidad and Tobago, the last report was of 114 cases and 8 deaths. The Minister of Health announced that the COVID-19 crisis has not ended, and people must prepare for a second and third wave. This is all the information we have for now. Back to you in the studio.
Guatemala's health minister stated on Tuesday that deportees from the United States were driving up the country's COVID-19 caseload, adding that on one flight, some 75% of deportees tested positive for the virus. Health Minister Hugo Monroy's comments contrasted with the previous government statements on infected deportees. Presidential spokesman Carlos Sandoval later told reporters that Monroy was referring to a March flight on which between 50% and 75% of passengers during all their time in isolation and quarantine tested positive. Before Tuesday, Guatemala had only reported 3 positive infections among deportees flown back by the United States. The Guatemalan government has asked the United States to not send more than 25 deportees per flight in order to examine them before departure and certify that they are not infected. Deportations from the US have continued despite the coronavirus outbreak. The United States has about 34,000 people in immigration detention, down from about 37,000 last month. The novel coronavirus continues to spread across Latin America. Ecuador has reported more than 300 deaths and over 7,600 positive cases, mainly in the coastal city of Guayaquil, the epicenter of the epidemic. Ecuador has been under a state of emergency since March 16th, with strict measures that limit movement. Meanwhile, Colombia has reported nearly 3,000 COVID-19 cases, with the authorities confirming 15 more fatalities, taking the death toll to 127. Chile has now dropped to third place in the region, with over 8,000 cases and a total of 94 fatalities. On Wednesday, Bolivia's de facto president, Janine Áñez, announced that the government had extended the country's nationwide lockdown through April 30th. Bolivia has reported 397 cases and 28 deaths. And Brazil has reported over 26,000 COVID-19 cases, and its death toll has reached over 1,500, making it the hardest hit nation in the Latin American region. According to the Brazilian Minister of Health, for the first time this Tuesday, the number of fatalities surpassed 200 in a single day. A field hospital set up in Manaus City received its first COVID-19 patient on Tuesday. The hospital will have a total of 150 beds and was established after the local government recognized that the health system is near collapse. Manaus is the only city in the state of Amazonas with intensive care units. The lack of hospitals, intensive care units and medical supplies has raised concerns among the authorities of Amazonas state, where 1,400 COVID-19 cases have been confirmed and 90 people have died. The COVID-19 crisis in Panama has highlighted the deterioration of the country's health sector due to neoliberal austerity measures. More in the following report.
The city is calm, as few people can be seen on the streets due to the curfew imposed by the government. Panama has surpassed 50 deaths due to COVID-19, with close to 2,000 infections. It faces this crisis with a damaged health system due to budget cuts.
The only things governments have tried to do is privatize our institutions, with a number of unpopular measures that have led us to what we're living through today. The health cabinet named by the president cannot resolve the ongoing issues due to the collapse of these institutions.
No pueda resolver el problema de la salud precisamente por el colapso de las instituciones.
In 2019, the government cut the health system's budget by close to $420 million as part of their austerity plan, which affected a number of health institutions. By 2020, the budget was once again cut back by $289 million, including the budget of an institute that was responsible for identifying and isolating the strain of SARS-CoV-2 and of creating agents to aid in its detection.
They have compromised the state's capacity of facing the COVID-19 pandemic. If we have had any success combating it, has been thanks to the sacrifice of health workers, who, despite having had their budgets cut time and again, are leading the fight.
De los médicos, de las enfermeras, de los técnicos, investigadores.
The budget cuts have been condemned by social movements who say they are part of austerity plans imposed by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, which also includes widespread privatization.
There's been a systematic privatization plan of the health system. Health workers are denouncing they lack supplies, in particular protective equipment.
Vemos las denuncias del personal de salud.
70% of Panamanians depend on the public health system. Experts agree that this crisis has uncovered the negligence of the state and the need for quality public health care.
More stories coming up after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. US President Donald Trump's announcement that he was halting funding to the World Health Organization in the midst of the novel coronavirus pandemic has sparked global rejection.
It is my belief that the World Health Organization must be supported. It is not the time to reduce the resources for the operations of the World Health Organization.
We therefore regret, whenever there is a setback in multilateralism, that this setback happens, and we obviously very much hope that there will be a swift return to normality, and that the WHO, which like all the countries of the world has faced an unprecedented pandemic, can carry out its work calmly.
The current global epidemic situation is still grim and is at a critical moment. This U.S. decision will weaken WHO's capabilities and undermine international cooperation in fighting the epidemic. It will affect all countries in the world, including the U.S., especially those vulnerable to crisis. We urged the U.S. to earnestly fulfill its responsibilities and obligations and support WHO to lead international cooperation in fighting the epidemic. China will, as always, support WHO and play an important role in promoting international public health and contributing to the fight against the epidemic.
More than 2 million people have contracted COVID-19 globally since the outbreak began last December. More than half of the number relates to outbreaks in European nations, especially Spain, Italy and France. However, the single worst hit country is the United States, with over 642,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases and over 28,000 deaths. Meanwhile, the pandemic has reached some 185 countries, with only 15 UN member states without confirmed coronavirus cases. 51 British members of Parliament have written to UK Foreign Secretary and Acting Prime Minister Dominic Raab to call for the US blockade of Cuba to be temporarily suspended during the COVID-19 pandemic. Graham Morris MP, chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Cuba, coordinated the letter which asked the British government to make a public statement and to raise the issue directly with its counterparts in the United States government. The letter cites examples from around the world where governments and international organisations have demanded that humanitarian aid be allowed to reach Cuba to help the country fight COVID-19. The MPs also acknowledged that despite the difficulties Cuba is facing, the island has sent more than 700 medical professionals to 17 countries, including Italy, Andorra, St. Lucia and Jamaica. Cuba's assistance for passengers and crew of the stranded cruise ship MS Bremer to return home received widespread coverage in the United Kingdom and garnered further support for an initiative launched by the British Cuba Solidarity Campaign to call for an end to the US blockade, which has gained almost 15,000 supporters from more than 130 countries. And the COVID-19 death toll has shot up dramatically in the United Kingdom, with 1 in 5 deaths in England and Wales linked to the coronavirus, while the government has been accused of underreporting deaths of the elderly in care homes. The death toll has increased by more than 5,000 in just 1 week, which suggests that official daily coronavirus figures published by the government have been inaccurate. Official figures showed that more than 93,000 people in the UK had tested positive for the coronavirus in hospitals for not providing enough personal protective equipment for frontline workers. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen warned EU member states on Wednesday to be cautious in lifting the restrictive measures imposed to slow the spread of the coronavirus, as Austria, the Czech Republic and Denmark already began lifting some lockdown measures.
Make sure that this is not a signal that containment measures can be lifted as of now, but it intends to provide a frame for member states' decisions. In general, we recommend a gradual approach. Every action should be continuously monitored whether the virus flares up again or the spread of the virus stays stable below a certain threshold. If you have the threshold of the virus and the capacity in the healthcare system, you need sufficient surveillance and monitoring capacity in form of large-scale testing. These preconditions are accompanied in this roadmap by a series of recommendations to ensure a gradual, consolidated, and a coordinated access across the European Union.
I now pass the floor. China reported a fall in new coronavirus cases in the mainland on Wednesday, but an increasing number of local transmissions in its far northeast region bordering Russia. 46 new confirmed cases were reported on Tuesday, compared to 89 cases a day earlier, according to the National Health Commission. Of the new cases, 36 involved travellers arriving in China from overseas, compared with 86 a day before. China has closed the border with Russia at Xianfeng, a city in Heilongjiang province, with a border checkpoint into Russia. New infections involving travellers arriving from Russia have also hit other parts of China, such as the northern autonomous region of Inner Mongolia and the financial hub of Shanghai. The government has launched an epidemiological survey in 9 regions in an effort to determine the full scale of asymptomatic infections. The total number of confirmed cases in mainland China has surpassed 82,000. A year after the fire that devastated part of the Notre Cathedral in Paris, restoration works have been halted due to the national lockdown to stop the spread of the coronavirus. In April 2019, the fire destroyed a significant part of the cathedral's interiors and caused its famous spire to collapse. This Wednesday at 8 p.m, one of the cathedral's bells, named Emmanuel, joined the nightly rounds of applause for overstretched health workers. The 13-ton bell, located in the south tower of Notre Dame, traditionally rings on solemn occasions. And we're taking one final break now, but stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. China has decided to send medical teams to Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia and Burkina Faso to assist their efforts against the COVID-19 pandemic.
China and Africa are good brothers, sharing weal and woe. We have kept in mind the valuable support that African countries have provided to China at the difficult time of its epidemic prevention and control. China follows closely the situation of the epidemic in Africa and has overcome difficulty to provide anti-epidemic materials in batches to the African Union and all African countries that have established diplomatic ties with China. Experts from 2 sides have conducted multiple video exchanges. Many Chinese provinces, cities, enterprises, and all government institutions have also provided anti-epidemic materials actively. All these are examples of building a closer China-Africa community of shared future. China is ready to strengthen cooperation with African countries to achieve the ultimate victory in fighting the epidemic.
Almost 20 European and African leaders have made a joint appeal for a massive international effort to boost Africa's coronavirus response. The appeal, signed by the leaders of France, Ethiopia, Germany, South Africa and other nations, calls for dramatic measures that include an immediate moratorium on all debt payments until the end of the pandemic. African officials have joined forces in recent days to appeal for billions of dollars in financial assistance and to improve their position in the global competition with richer countries for badly needed medical equipment. The African Union has appointed 4 special envoys to mobilize support and created a platform to help the continent's 54 countries bulk buy medical goods at more affordable prices. President of Malawi, Peter Mutharika, has announced a strict 3-week lockdown to tackle the spread of COVID-19. The president said during a press conference held this Wednesday that the lockdown will end on May 9th, but could be extended further. Meanwhile, dozens of health workers in Malawi's commercial capital, Blantyre, have staged a sit-in to protest against poor working conditions, including a critical shortage of personal protective equipment. The action came despite the National Organisation of Nurses and Midwives on Monday calling on its members to return to work following a brief strike over the weekend. Malawi, one of the last African countries to confirm the presence of the coronavirus, has reported 16 cases and 2 fatalities. Namibian borders will remain closed and a partial lockdown in force for a further 2.5 weeks until May 4th as part of new measures to contain the spread of the novel coronavirus. The sparsely populated Southwest African country of under 3 million people has confirmed 16 COVID-19 cases but has not reported any new infections in the past week. Mining operations, which make up half of Namibia's export revenue, have been suspended pending the lockdown. Informal traders and open markets will still be allowed to operate, subject to strict hygiene and social distancing measures. Africa now has over 16,000 confirmed coronavirus cases. According to the latest data by the Johns Hopkins University and Africa Centers for Disease Control, the entire continent is seeing a rise in cases. A number of African countries have imposed a range of prevention and containment measures against the spread of the pandemic. 873 deaths have been reported in 52 African nations. Meanwhile, the number of recovered patients has reached 3,235. South Africa remains the country with the highest number of cases at more than 2,500, closely followed by Egypt with a similar number and Algeria with over 2,100 confirmed cases. G20 nations announced support for a temporary halt to debt payment by poor countries this Wednesday as they struggle to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. The group, composed by the world's largest economies, also called on private creditors to participate in the initiative.
Ministers and governors have worked as well to deliver international financial assistance to the developing countries. Our actions today include a G20 initiative to suspend debt service payment for the poorest countries. All bilateral official creditors will participate in this initiative.
The United Nations warned on Wednesday that some 74 million people in the water-scarce Arab region are at greater risk of catching the novel coronavirus because they lack a sink or soap at home. According to the UN report, 31 million people in Sudan, more than 14 million in war-torn Yemen and 9.9 million in Egypt are considered at high risk of infection. Refugees and people living in conflict areas or under occupation bear an additional burden. While hand-washing has been promoted as one of the key prevention measures against the coronavirus, an estimated 26 million refugees and displaced people are at greater risk of contracting the illness region-wide as they lack adequate access to water and hygiene services. The Tour de France has joined the long list of international sporting events to be postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic. Cycling's premier event will now be held from August 29th and will finish on September 20th, the organiser confirmed on Wednesday. The Tour de France has never been cancelled apart from during the two world wars. This year's route includes 21 stages and covers 218 kilometres. The original proposal, faced with the pandemic, was to hold the event without spectators, but this was not to the liking of organisers or sponsors. FIFA and the World Health Organization have teamed up to combat the coronavirus by launching a new awareness campaign led by world-famous footballers, calling on people around the world to follow 5 key steps to stop the spread of the disease. We finish this news brief with one of the videos produced to promote this initiative. Don't forget to follow us on social media and to check out our website, telesurenglish.net. For Telesur English, I am Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.
For the first time ever, we, the entire world, are all playing on the same team. Our opponent is a disease. We need determination, discipline, and teamwork to beat the coronavirus. The world of football is united, and together we will win.
There are 5 key steps to tackling the coronavirus: hands, elbow, face, distance, and feel.
Comece pelas mãos. Por favor, lave as mãos com frequência usando sabão ou gel desinfetante.
With your elbows bent, please cover your nose and mouth if you sneeze or cough. If using tissues, dispose of them immediately.
Respecto a la cara, evita tocarte tus ojos, nariz y boca, así puedes evitar que el virus entre en tu cuerpo.
保持距离，对于人与人的交往而言，要保持一定的距离。对于有咳嗽等症状的人来说，更要保持在1.5米以上的距离。要学会避让，躲开。
Si vous vous sentez mal, restez chez vous et suivez scrupuleusement les consignes des autorités sanitaires.